Welcome to the Politics Guys. I'm Michael Baranowski, a political scientist at Northern Kentucky University. Okay, welcome to our Wednesday Politics Guys show. You know, normally what we do is we have an interview or we do exclusively listener mail, but there was so much stuff that we wanted to talk about on Sunday that we didn't have a chance to get to that we wanted to explore some of these stories and maybe get to a little listener mail. We'll see about that. But anyway, you know, the first thing I wanted to talk about, Jay, on this show was Donald Trump's ongoing battle with Congress, actually with his own party in Congress. You know, I think it's safe to say that there is yet to have been a week in the Trump administration where President Trump didn't commit some kind of significant tactical error that's going to make it much harder for him to actually get things done, at least anything that requires somebody else's assistance, right? And this week, to me, the big error was the shot, well, multiple errors of the same type. The shots that he took at House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell for not following his suggested legislative strategy of rolling debt-ceiling legislation into the VA bill. Because, of course, Donald Trump is a master legislative strategist, you know. But then he takes more shots at McConnell for not making an Obamacare repeal happen. Then he takes some random shots at Republican Senators Bob Corker and Jeff Flake. And then, of course, you know, he ramps up his shrinking base at a rally in Phoenix by essentially calling any media with the temerity to criticize him an enemy of the American people. And, you know, I almost forgot. He tweeted that he'd be fine with a government shutdown if Congress doesn't approve spending for his Mexico border wall. And you remember that. That's that wall that Mexico is going to somehow magically pay for. So, Jay, what are your thoughts on these fights that the president's picking? At least, I mean, okay, I think saying that he's going to war with them is overblown, and I've seen some of that in the media, but at least he's openly feuding.
This has not gone unnoticed, and I'd say there's a couple different kinds of presidential tweets, presidential sort of shots at Congress. Some are the personal type, for example, like the Jeff Flake of nobody even knows who the hell he is, and which again is just bizarre. The bizarre sort of, you know, personal shots he would take at a member of Congress, and you know, I would typically say, in most of presidential history, you would tend not to do that ever, just because it sort of it lowers you as the president, and it sort of raises the profile of a senator or congressman. It's again just something that would seem to be against common sense to do, even if it was someone of the opposing party, which in this case is the same team. The second thing he does is putting Congress into a box, and by saying things like he'd approve a government shutdown if he doesn't get his wall and so forth. You know, those sort of things then make it much more difficult for them to actually do business, conduct anything. You know, the other thing is if Trump wants to say these things to members of Congress, he can pick up the phone. He can say, "Come on down to the White House. I'd like to speak with you." But by doing these just random tweets in public, he eliminates the possibility of discussion and compromise. And I would say most of the center right press hasn't begun to. This is sort of you know, it's been a long march here. Really say, listen, congressional Republicans may be in a position now where they have to realize they're going this alone, so to speak, and they should treat. For example, there was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal that says, "Look, at this point, congressional Republicans should treat Trump as not a Republican president, but as just some independent president."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and in fact, Trey posted a similar kind of comment on our Facebook site this week about that, and there was a lot of back and forth on that. Though, you know, I guess I'm gonna try to look at this from Donald Trump's point of view. This is going to be hard for me, but I'm going to try to do it. And it seems to me, at least, take the Jeff Flake thing. Jeff Flake recently came out with a book called "Conscience of a Conservative: A Rejection of Destructive Politics and a Return to Principle." And it was pretty much
sounds good.
Yeah, well, you know, but I mean, it was pretty much calling Donald Trump out, more or less. And if you're the president, you are sort of the de facto leader of your party. And I think Donald Trump feels aggrieved by the idea that, well, here I am the representative of the Republican Party, and people like Jeff Flake are taking clear shots at me. And so therefore, I'm going to kind of fight back against. I think that's sort of how he sees it. Now, I think there's a good reason for Jeff Flake was kind of a never Trumper sort of guy, basically. And I guess I would say it's sort of a good and courageous thing that he's done. And I think it was great that he published this book. But I think Jeff Flake is a different story than Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan have gone out of their way to not criticize Donald Trump, right? And so that's a different thing. And honestly, I don't know.
Well, and again, like I said, I think the Jeff Flake thing that's again just more a weird, goofy personal thing, and doesn't necessarily spill over into policy. The Ryan and McConnell criticisms do.
Yeah, but I mean, I would think that the best way to magnify a criticism of somebody that's saying that you are unfit to be president or lack the temperament is to give that person a microphone, a megaphone, which,
Hey, guess what? New book out.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's exactly going against his best interest, but we've seen this time and time again. And of course, there are more than a few whispers that Mitch McConnell basically has privately decided that the Trump presidency is more or less unsalvageable from a legislative point of view, but no one's going to come out. Certainly not Mitch McConnell is going to come out and say, hey, Donald Trump is not the leader of our party. He's basically an independent in Republican clothing, and we're going to try to work around him as best we can. And the reason why is because Mitch McConnell is not Donald Trump, right? I mean, Mitch McConnell knows that would be sort of a pointless statement of principle, I guess you could call it, that would not advance his legislative agenda, because he knows that the way to get people to go along with you is not to needlessly antagonize them. And that is a lesson that Donald Trump has not learned for whatever reason. Like I said, the thing with the Mexico border wall, I mean, I think that of all the things that Donald Trump has promised, the Mexico border wall is the sort of least non-negotiable. I don't see there's any way that Donald Trump, if he gets through 4 years as president, and that remains to be seen, if there isn't some sort of significant wall building that goes on, I don't know how he can say that, how anyone could say that he hasn't been basically a failure, because that was his big thing, build the wall, and lock up crooked Hillary, that sort of thing. But build the wall was really the thing. And so I think he kind of needs to go to the mattresses on this. I don't know that he's going to end up being okay with a government shutdown when push comes to shove, but it would not surprise me. Exactly. Now, government shutdowns, of course, as you know, Jay, when Republicans have done it, it's almost always come back to bite them when they've done that.
Well, a government, we've noticed there's sort of an iron rule in politics, and that is government shutdowns hurt Republicans.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who starts it, who brings it on, who's in power. Government shutdowns hurt Republicans. And Trump, again, the idea that he would push a government shutdown, or his other suggestion about tying other pieces of his agenda to things like, say, the debt ceiling increase. That's just sort of the apocalyptic sort of rhetoric that has caused problems before, and the stock market goes goofy when you're messing with the debt ceiling, and all these things that, again, just making problems for people who should be on your own team. I do think he might be able to get away without having an actual wall built. If he did something like, hey, look, this new budget is going to approve X much more money for border enforcement, and whether it's a wall, whether it's a fence, whether it's a moat, whether it's guys in Jeeps, the statement is, we are taking our border seriously, and here's money and steps we're taking, and we're being successful. I think he could do that, and maybe there's a portion where, hey, here's an actual wall you can look at. But again, I think, again, Congress would be willing to go along with that. Greater border security and funds for that. You could even co-opt the locals and say, listen, we're going to have more government grants for local law enforcement to assist in border security and so forth. But he doesn't seem to want to do that. And again, it's just this perplexing thing of hitting people on your own team, often harder than even people, or I guess, what I think it is. It's because football season's coming up, Mike, and it sort of occurs to me, it's almost like, a blocker kind of just running out at random and like hitting the wide receiver for their own team,
Right.
just out of the blue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Even if you have some kind of beef with them during the weekend practice, that would just be entirely against your own interest, but you just can't help yourself, essentially. So yeah, exactly. Speaking of football, before we get to our next story, and in fact, our next story is going to be a football related story. We're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns national anthem protest. But I want to thank our first sponsor today, SeatGeek. It's a great, low cost, super convenient way to buy tickets for live events. With SeatGeek, you can find the best seats at the best prices. It's fully guaranteed. Only takes a few taps on the app or a few clicks as you access it through their website, SeatGeek.com. And I've said it before, I've used SeatGeek both through the app on my phone and at SeatGeek.com. Either way, it's quick, easy, informative, and hey, you can get football tickets through SeatGeek. I'm a big Steelers fan, and I looked up and I found that I could get tickets to the big Steelers Bengals game here in my hometown of Cincinnati, where and actually they cost a lot less than I would have guessed. So there you go. I can get tickets to my beloved and playoff bound Cleveland Indians. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So, and plus with SeatGeek, you can get updates on it's not just sports, but whatever venues, events, performers you like to keep track of. It'll even connect you up with Spotify, your music library, Facebook to give you notifications about artists you listen to or follow. Though, if you don't like notifications, you can turn that off. And when you buy a ticket, they'll even put the day and time of the event on your calendar if you want. And best of all, Politics Guys listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code PoliticsGuy today. That's promo code PoliticsGuy for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Okay, so let's talk about that Cleveland Browns story. That's something we haven't said a whole lot on this show. This week, the Cleveland Browns this last week, the Cleveland Browns staged the largest NFL team national anthem protest to date, with 17 players participating, including 2 white players. And that's kind of a big deal for a lot of folks. So, Jay, I was wondering, just it's your team still at my former hometown, your hometown.
This is, well, I'll tell you, and we have some history on this, obviously. I've been a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan, and you, despite growing up in Cleveland, because you're just a contrarian.
Yeah, I am.
Have been a lifelong Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And I don't know if everyone in the country understands what exactly that means. But that's sort of a big divide.
It's like Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton.
The Cleveland Browns for the last 2 decades have been, though, just entirely dysfunctional. And every year I sort of vow this is going to be the last year I'm going to bother watching the Cleveland Browns. And this may have been a turning point, I think, for me and for a lot of fans, just continually beating their head against the wall. For a whole lot of reasons. And I don't know. What's your thought, first of all, on these national anthem protests?
Because, I don't know.
I've got some.
Sure, I don't know how effective they are, but I'm all for raising awareness. I'm all for players exercising their right to do that, certainly. And I think there are a lot of very serious race-related issues in this country for a lot of reasons. And in part, I've said it more than a few times that I feel that the Trump administration, and particularly Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, is a big step backwards in a lot of these things. And it's not terrifically surprising to me that this happens in Cleveland. There are only 4 NFL cities, in fact, that have a higher percentage.
because we've got to
attention. No, but there are only 4 NFL cities that have a higher percentage of Black residents: Detroit, Baltimore, New Orleans, and Atlanta. So, Cleveland is a majority Black city. And so, given that it's mostly been black players that have been involved in these things and so forth, so I think it's good. I think it's healthy. I think it raises awareness and starts people talking about, or not starts people, but helps to continue the conversation on these things. I don't know how effective it's going to be in the long run, but I certainly think it's a great thing, and that if professional football players or other celebrities use their use their celebrity to raise awareness about important issues, social issues, I'm all for it.
All right. I think it's ridiculous.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, well, and let me make something clear, because again, I agree with you. If these players want to do something in their community, there's a lot that can be done. There's a lot that they can do, and also I should say that former Cleveland Brown, perhaps the greatest Cleveland Brown ever, Jim Brown, shares my opinion. And Jim Brown and I don't agree on a whole lot of things. Um, but it's one thing to say I'm upset about policing tactics, and someone ought to do more about this. And it's another to say I am therefore showing disrespect for the national anthem for my country, and to me it all strikes me as just it's a bit of well, like we complain about the liberals a lot, moral preening of the, oh, look at me. Again, these are folks who are certainly well paid, and this is I'm going to take a step away from being the political analyst guy and being like the sports guy. It's especially ridiculous when you have a team that is so horrible and as the Cleveland Browns have been, that it's. Yeah, I'm saying this is Brown playing. Just play football, damn it. I mean, it's so. Again, this is sort of a personal thing to me, but I think these protests actually hurt the cause more than they help. And there is so much more that these players can do. And in fairness, some of them do things in the community. But I think this is silly, sort of cry for attention. I think it has a very negative impact on the NFL's brand as a whole, and I think it's just a show of disrespect. And to me, so much of what we do on the show, and I know I'm just kind of babbling here, but it's about how you raise your differences, how we discuss our differences, how we bring them up. And I think this is just very much the wrong way to go about it. Essentially the statement of America sucks kind of thing because of whatever incidents.
Yeah,
so
I don't think it was America sucks. I mean, they basically said that, well, we are in a prayer circle here. We are praying for our country. I mean, that's not saying America sucks. It's not at all. I mean, when you say that, we knelt in a circle and prayed, and America sucks.
I mean, if we're talking about the origination of the Kaepernick,
that's a different thing. Yeah,
and this is
absolutely.
obviously
I think there's a right way and a wrong way.
This is different in that they're saying we're praying for our country rather than it's just a protest.
Yeah.
But it's still a protest.
Yeah, and I think and I see what you're saying, but I think it is a protest that is much needed, because I think there is endemic racial injustice still in this country, and we've come a long way, but we have such a long way to go yet. And anything that will help advance us to that, I am all in favor of. All right. Well, before we get to our next story, we want to thank our second sponsor for today. That is ZipRecruiter. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Good help is hard to find. My dad was a carpenter contractor for 50 plus years, and he was always complaining about that. Maybe part of the reason why was that I was actually one of his helpers for a while, and let's just say I did not exactly I was not exactly the greatest help in the world. And maybe if ZipRecruiter had been around in my dad's time, he might have gotten a better helper than me. God knows he deserved one. Anyway, that's where ZipRecruiter comes in. With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites with just one click. then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. So, if my dad were posting something, he would not get me as a match because I would not be a match. And that's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. In fact, over 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within 1 day. And there's no juggling emails or calls to your office. You just screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. So, hey, find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, Politics Guys listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free, as in no money involved. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/politicsguy. That's ZipRecruiter.com/politicsguy. And a third time, because why not? Let's say it a third time. ZipRecruiter.com/politicsguy to post jobs for free. All right, moving on. So, there was an eclipse this last week. You heard about it, Jay? Did you look into the sun?
I went out there. Well, I looked at the sun. One, I built my own little, Eclipse viewer.
Yeah.
From office supplies that I had handy.
Me too.
And then also we had someone in our office who brought in some welding glasses.
Oh, okay.
And used that, and it was incredibly cool. I'm big on that kind of thing. I'm a big sort of, science, space kind of geek. So
well, it is pretty cool. And I got to say, I went outside and I felt this incredibly strong urge to look up at the sun. I kind of looked in the general area, but I was, I didn't look right up at that thing, and I think that was the wise thing to do, obviously. But I
can imagine anyone would look directly up at the sun, right?
Well, and that's what I wanted to say. It's interesting that, of course, there were these pictures on. I saw them on social media. That's probably where most people saw it, of President Trump apparently staring directly into the eclipse. And some people saying where an aide from down below said, "Hey, don't stare into the sun, President Trump." And then of course, I posted this on our social media, and there were some people who said, "Oh, come on, this is just an overblown, ridiculous thing. President Trump didn't stare directly into the sun." And okay, he probably didn't, right? But he was certainly looking up into the sun around that area at the moment of the eclipse. And some people say, well, why does that matter? Is this an important thing? And I think it is, actually.
Okay. I do too, but maybe for different reasons. Go
Here's
ahead.
why. I think the larger point is that this ridiculous, overblown eclipse story is yet another example of President Trump not recognizing that the President of the United States is more just than some guy who gets to do all this cool stuff because he's President of the United States. The President of the United States is supposed to set an example. President Trump jokes about being presidential. In his speech in Phoenix, he was joking about, well, they say it's not presidential to mention names of these people who I hate, so I won't mention them. And then he goes out and basically does that. He thinks it's a joke. But no, the President of the United States is supposed to set an example to everyone. I mean, and we might make, a lot of people may think that's sort of an old-fashioned kind of sort of thing, but I certainly don't. I think there are millions of Americans who agree with me. And so, so one example, a simple thing can do is say, well, don't look up directly into the sun during an eclipse, kids. And yet I think he knew that. But it's another example of President Trump being essentially incapable of reining in his impulses in the service of a greater good, of being an example. He just can't help himself, because with Donald Trump, and you've talked before about how it's hazardous to psychoanalyze anyone at a distance, the president included. And I agree with you in general, but gee, this seems like such a clear case of Donald Trump understands the world through the lens of Donald Trump and nobody else. And it's Donald Trump first, foremost, and everything. It's all about what Donald Trump wants to do. If Donald Trump is aggrieved, if someone's attacking Donald Trump, you need to be loyal to Donald Trump. And that's his worldview as far as I can tell. He doesn't get an idea of a greater good that does not involve himself or his immediate family members, which are just kind of little Donald Trump satellites, essentially. And I think this is just a perfect example of that. So that's my take on it. What's yours, Jay?
Well, my take is sort of related, closely related, and it's more to the idea that he continues to commit political malpractice. And as a Republican, it just makes you want to beat your head up against the wall. Maybe he was looking into the sun, maybe he was. And again, my first instinct of oh, is this like George Bush and the barcode scanner, where there was a picture taken and then a sort of caption just to make him look dumb. Maybe he was looking at something else. Maybe there was an interesting bird or plane or something like that that caught his attention. But regardless, the idea is if you're the president and you're going out there, you know that the media will be photographing you. And you know that, or you probably should have heard that there have been, warnings, and that they would want nothing more than to take a picture of you looking into the sun. So don't do it. That to me is just the, so often of don't put yourself in the, even, going back to the, some of the Charlottesville comments, you know that the media is going to try to cast you as racist. So don't do anything even remotely close to that would give them that hook to do that. And the second piece to this, that this is sort of political malpractice, and maybe this isn't Trump's fault himself, but maybe his folks, maybe the lack of a communications director or something. But, to me, the Eclipse is something that if you're the president, if you're Trump, this is awesome, fun, free media. This is so easy. You invite the head of NASA to come over and view it with you with your glasses, and you make a statement. Again, something similar to what I said the other day of, can be sort of a unifying thing. And again, whether you look at this as what a incredible creation God has made, and isn't this beautiful, or if you just do it as a wow, science is cool. And I don't even necessarily think those two messages are incompatible. You can sort of say both. Here's like it's just a real easy. It's the 2-foot putt that you miss again. And again, you invite some scientists over to come look at it with you, and you say, wow, that is really cool. And
or even better, you invite Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to come on and watch it with you. And then if they don't, you can post a tweet saying, I don't know, I invited them to watch it with me. I thought this transcended politics, but apparently I'm wrong. And boom.
They hate science.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So such a great opportunity, an event that brought the entire country together. And wow, like you said, missing a 2-foot putt. It just blows your mind. This is easy. It should be easy, and yet it wasn't.
Right, and exactly. This is something that there was no political. And look, is it going to be a huge political gain? No, it's not huge political gain. But it's the matter of doing some of these little things right. And would the far left still have made fun of this? Oh yes, of course. But yeah, that's what frustrates me is one, allowing yourself to have that picture taken looking up into the sun, knowing that picture is going to be taken, and knowing that that's going to be the meme that's out there. And then secondly, knowing that you could have avoided it and really made it a positive and didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, Donald Trump being Donald Trump, I guess. I think we have time for at least a little bit of listener mail, if you're up for it, Jay.
Sure.
Okay, well, here's an interesting comment or question, I guess, from Sean from Facebook, and should point out that if you're interested in interacting with us and maybe getting some of your listener mail, it's not just through email. You can post comments on Facebook or even direct message us on Twitter if you're following us on Twitter, and we check all that out. We're always looking for interesting stuff to talk about on the show. So anyway, this is Sean's comment. He said, I recently read Al Franken's book, Giant of the Senate. It was quite good and better than others of his that I've tried to read, but one part in the book says he adopted Hillary Clinton's senatorial model of be a workhorse, not a show horse, which in part means being very accessible to local media, but not doing national media. He says, now I've seen him on some Sunday shows unrelated to pimping his book, Do you think that means he's considering running for the Democratic nomination for president in 2020? And I should say, before we talk about that, I actually heard him on a couple of interviews. I listened to him on Mark Maron's podcast, where that was really sort of interesting. It was a little bit almost more about his sort of drug-fueled early days at Saturday Night Live, which he's been very open about, so forth in the 70s. But it was an interesting interview. So, but anyway, so what do you think about that? Can you see a President Franken in our future, Jay?
Well, I could see him potentially toying with the candidacy, and I've heard rumblings that he's out raising money that he might be seeking to run. I think at the end of the day, he would yield to some other progressive like a Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders if it came to that. But maybe he's trying to get his name out there as a potential vice president possibility. I don't see Franken having the broad appeal really to ever actually to win the nomination though. So, and I preferred him back when he was on drugs and on Saturday Night Live and a lot funnier. But I mean that's my take on it. Who knows what he'll do? And I suppose in this case, when you've got a party that doesn't have someone who is the definitive leader, and there is sort of this insurgent leftist bent, he's smart just to try to start, laying the groundwork just in case. For example, I mean, if again, say there's a leftward tilt in the party, and that seems to be where the energy is, and for whatever reason, Warren or Sanders or someone else, implodes, he'd be there. So I get that. So,
I would initially think, well, there's no way Al Franken could be president, but, Donald Trump is president of the United States. And I still wake up some mornings and think, wow, Donald Trump somehow managed to get elected president of the United States. So I guess nothing really seems impossible to me. Al Franken, I think, has proven himself to be a very intelligent, serious, progressive voice. I think that came through very much in the interviews I've read from, and I've heard on podcasts as well. So, Elizabeth Warren is no spring chicken. In fact, a lot of the progressive voices, or a number of them in Congress, are a little older. And I don't know. I would certainly consider supporting Al Franken if he chose to run. I'd obviously, need to think a little bit more seriously about that. And I tend to think that he might be a little too far left of what I'm comfortable with, but I could certainly see it. So there you go. All right. I think we have time if just for one more listener mail question.
Okay.
Robert posting a comment on politicsguys.com. Robert writes, I am a 56-year-old Canadian and have lived here my whole life. We have had single-payer universal health care since the 1960s. I'm not sure where Jay gets his info on our health care, but Jay, you are great, but I pick my own doctor and always have. And my doctor and I decide on my treatment, never the Canadian government. I suspect that the rich private U.S. health companies want to scare us about single-payer health care. Every Canadian has zero deductible coverage with no limits on pre-existing conditions. Jay, get with the 60s, man, and make America great like Canada. P.S. I love your show and both of you, but in a manly, brotherly way.
Thank you, Robert.
So, I would say, let me just say that I think that Canada is a great model. I would be thrilled if we had a healthcare system that was along the lines of Canada. But I think that, and other listeners have actually raised similar questions, I think because of very strong cultural differences with, even though they're very close to us geographically, there's a very different culture in Canada. And for those cultural reasons, I can't see us anytime in the near-term future moving toward a system like that. The resistance would be too big and too fierce. And there are just, I've pointed this out a number of times. It's not like there aren't a lot of people making a lot of money off of the American healthcare system. This is incredibly lucrative for certain people. And those entrenched interests are going to fight very hard for this system to stay the way it is because it works for them. And, in my talk with my interview not too long ago with Lawrence Lessig, that's kind of his big thing is that, well, given that we have a system based on raising immense amount of money for congressional elections, as long as those people have that strong voice, it's sort of unrealistic to expect fundamental change when members of Congress, essentially both Democrats and Republicans, by the way, have to rely on big money donors to stay in office. And so I agree with you. I agree with you, Robert. But I just, because of American political culture and because of how our institutions work, I just don't see that happening. Jay?
I think it's you're right on that there are a lot of people who are making a lot of money. On the other hand, though, I think there's also a lot of people who are pretty happy with the healthcare system that they have, but that's the political reality of it. And the idea that for those who are happy with their current care, with their current doctor and so forth, that someone's going to take that away from them, it's going to change, that's a powerful political motivator. When Obamacare came in, a lot of people did in fact lose their doctor, lose access to the doctor. And again, that's sort of a function of how our healthcare patchwork operates. So it's not an unrealistic fear that people might not be able to go to the provider that they choose. And there's also, I think there are a lot of demographic differences between the U.S. and Canada. That again, like you said, we're geographically close, but there's the political cultural differences. But I think there are also some demographic differences that make a single payer type system much more difficult to implement in the U.S. than in a smaller, less populated country like Canada.
Yeah, those are some good points, and so I think it's fair to say that, Jay, that while you and I disagree fairly starkly on on how much we would like to see a system like Canada's in the United States, we both agree that it's not something that we're likely to see at any point in the near-term future, certainly.
Yeah, probably not.
There you go. All right. Well, that's it for this episode, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you like what you heard and that you will check out today's sponsors, SeatGeek, where Politics Guys listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase by downloading the SeatGeek app or going to SeatGeek.com and entering promo code PoliticsGuy. And ZipRecruiter, where Politics Guys listeners can post jobs for free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/PoliticsGuy. Listener support is a huge help to us. We really do appreciate it. If you're interested in joining our great group of Politics Guys supporters, you can just go to politicsguys.com and click on the Patreon link you'll see there. And if you want to support the show without spending a single dime, nickel, penny, that would be really appreciated. You can share this episode with your friends and followers or pass along our new show posts and tweets on Facebook and Twitter. Also, leaving reviews and ratings on iTunes is a sort of 800-pound gorilla of podcast that also really does help. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can mail us at mail@politicsguys.com or reach out on our Facebook page where we post stuff throughout the week too. That's facebook.com/politicsguys page. We're also on Twitter @politicsguys. The executive producers of the Politics Guys are Michael Baranowski, Jay Carson, Trey Orndorff, and Bruce Johnson. The show was produced by Michael Baranowski. We'll be back with a new show on Sunday. We hope you'll join us.